Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Mindset Teaching Outside the Box. We are your hosts, Jillian Willie,
And Eileen Edwards.
and today we are talking about presents. And no, not talking about the presents that you open up on holidays and your birthday.
No, not that kind of presence. Different spelling, different meaning. So, we're going to be talking about presence being a quality of being fully yet authentically available in the present moment, which I'll get more into in a moment. But being available in the present moment, often experienced as a quality of being connected and open to what is arising or co arising between and among us.
This is such a powerful topic. Last week we talked about awareness, and there is definitely a connection between awareness and presence. But awareness is more of like we are able to be aware, and we are in awareness when you take out like the body and the mind and all of that. But presence is being here in the now and not worrying about the past, not worrying about the future, and just being with it and really taking in what is happening.
Yeah, being fully present. So, like 100% in the present moment, in the now, like you said, not thinking about that past or that future, just this present moment. I do think you need awareness as part of this, but I'm going to talk about what the actual word present means, because I think that that'll give a little bit more clarity too as to that ability to have presence. So, present is this exact moment. So, it doesn't even consider the past or the future. It is almost like the pause between life happening, and it's happening right now. I was reading an article before, and it talked about how um, we're always like coming from somewhere, we're going to somewhere else, um, but that can make it like challenging for us to focus on that pause. But there is that pause, that actual present moment, the now. Um, so I think it's hard for people to understand that we actually do have a built-in pause. There's a break between what we just did and what we will do in the future next. But right now, in between that is a pause, and that is the present moment.
I think that's a really good point that you made. In today's world, we're very go, go, go driven, and that's such a common thing that it's just like you were saying, from one thing to the next to the next. And people are always saying, I'm so busy, I'm overwhelmed, I've got this, and my kids have to go here, and then we're doing this. And we don't take that time to stop and be aware and present in what is happening now. And then I feel like it's that feeling of when people say time flies, I feel like that's because we aren't present.
Yep.
Like I think about my days and what happens, and it's like I look at the clock and it's like 5 hours go by. I'm like, well, where'd my day go? Because I wasn't really present in what I was doing.
Exactly. It's actually a topic that I love to talk about. I won't talk about it now, but I'll bring up the term called vertical time. Um, and it just talks about the difference between what we consider time, that horizontal, um, uh, lateral, like it's like we're going across and it's just moving through. Whereas if you're truly in the present moment and aware of everything that's going on, you get this like depth, this vertical aspect to your time, um, that people don't even realize exists. But I've witnessed it myself and I've experienced it. And it's kind of hard to even digest until you experience it yourself, honestly. But after experiencing it multiple times, and I'll give an example later, maybe, but um, it's really healing and really beneficial to just be truly in the present moment.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I've never heard of that vertical time. So I'm excited to learn more about that. That's really cool. But I I agree. It like I was thinking this weekend, I've been trying to be more in the present moment. And this weekend, it was Father's Day, and we went away to our friends for a barbecue, and we spent the weekend because it was a few hours away. And we spent most of the day outside. And I started at the party just kind of chasing my kids around and like not really enjoying myself at all. And then I finally just stopped and said, you know what? No, I need to enjoy this. I need to soak this in. I need to just let. And I think that was kind of a moment for me where I kind of understood. I mean, I've known about presence, but kind of connecting it to the word let and just letting the moment be. And then I started to really just look around and look at the trees and the grass and my kids playing on the play set. And I just started soaking it in and feeling the gratitude for what is and the beauty for what is. And I wasn't, I'll admit, I wasn't in that the entire weekend, but here and there, I tried to be in the present moment. And it was just such an uplifting, beautiful time. And it's like when I think back to the weekend, those are those little moments that I cherish. Like being in the moment is so powerful and just so beautiful.
I totally agree. Um, Something that I don't know, I feel like maybe it was Eckhart Tolle, talks about being, just being, not doing, which is what most of us live our lives in. We live our lives in this doing mindset, constantly doing something. What are we doing next? What did we just do? Rather than just being, which is, I think, kind of what you're describing, like just being in the moment, not doing anything in particular. And I don't think this means like lazy or disengaged or anything like that, but fully engaged in whatever it is, but just focusing on the actual being part of it, not what the doing is. Um, and so I think it really is important.
It is so good. Yeah, I think so often people think if they're not doing, they're not being productive or they're not living.
Common
But
misconception.
and this is probably another topic for another day of how to, make the most of your time. And it really doesn't, it's not about how much you do. It's about what are you doing with the time that you have. So there's plenty of successful people out there that don't work very long hours at all. It's about what you can get done in this time. So again, I don't want to get into that today, but I think that kind of ties into what you were saying, that if we can learn how to maximize our time and spend our time doing activities that are productive to whatever our end goal is, then we can spend more time in the present moment and not worrying about X, Y, and Z going on in our lives.
Yeah, because I think what happens, it's not so much of, having your to-do lists and um, figuring out how to maximize it in the sense of how can I do more in um, this time, or how can I multitask, which don't even get me started on that. Um, but it's the actual how you're doing it, not so much what you're doing, but how you're doing it. And that's where you get this, like I was saying earlier, you get this vertical time. You get it's almost like you feel like you have like a superpower because you realize that in the same amount of time that you've had in another instance, um, you've gotten 3 times as much done, and it's only because you were truly in the present moment with each thing that you were doing. You weren't trying to um, multitask, you weren't trying to do more. The goal wasn't to do more, it was to just be and do, and then happens, letting things go. And suddenly things are more um, productive, but not with that purpose. That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I know people, kind of going off of your multitasking thing that you were saying there, people think like, oh, I can multitask and I can do all of these things. But in reality, we cannot actually multitask.
Mm, our
Your
brain
mind
one.
can only focus on one thing at a time. So, like going back to talking about like the power of our thoughts, you can only think about one thing at a time. So, if you can only think about one thing at a time, it's not physically possible to be doing multiple things at the same time because you're using your mind to do whatever you're doing.
And
So,
the thing is you're trying, but what you're ending up doing is not doing any of it well.
mhm,
None of it.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I know I find that in my on the days that I sit back and say, well, what did I do today? The days that I tried to fit everything in and do all of these different things at once and got distracted and blah, blah, blah. Those are the days that I'm like, I did nothing. But the days that I'm like laser focused and it's okay, here's the one thing I'm going to do and I've time blocked and all of that good stuff. Those are the days that I can sit back and say, yeah, I got a lot done today. So it's really not about more. It's not about fitting it all in. It's about fitting in what's important and what's productive to you. Um, I know that's getting off topic, but I think it's a good thing to kind of touch on.
Totally agree. Another thing that I was thinking about this whole idea of presence is it's almost like um, it's you communicating. Now, we're not talking about like talking, but you communicating with your inner being in consciousness, in that conscious moment awareness. Um, and so it's not about what's outside, it's about you being in conscious moment awareness, that communication that you have within yourself.
Mhm. Yes, everything comes from within. So often we look to the outside world for whatever it is, what we should do or what we should think or really anything, what's happening in our lives, our beliefs. Um, but it all comes from within. We have all the answers.
Yep.
We are in charge of our world. And you're absolutely right. We have like two sides. We have an ego and we have a higher self. People have different names for those two,
Yes.
pieces of us, but that's the terminology I use. So your higher self is the one that has all of the answers. That is your connection to source or the universe or God or
Mhm.
whatever you call, that entity, and is just love and light and good and positivity. And the ego is the opposite. The ego is what wants you to stay stuck, wants you to work hard, holds those paradigms, um, has the negative thoughts of I have to be better or they were mean to me or whatever it is. So yeah, being able to recognize those things and really focusing on like your higher self and tapping into that more. And that's going to help you be present.
Absolutely. That ego really has all those things, those nasty things like shame and judgment and comparison. All of those things just come along with the ego. And it seems like it's really a powerful thing because um, it makes you think like it's you,
Mhm,
but it's not your true self. It's
mhm,
just part of being a human. I'm
mhm,
sure that in creation it was for a survival reason, but not in a world that we live in now.
Hmm. Yeah, I heard somewhere that the ego is like the survival self. So that makes complete sense. And that would make sense that the negative, the would be more of a not that surviving is negative. Of course we have to survive, but that survival instinct. Sorry, my dog just saw an animal outside. That survival instinct would be focused on like just what you need now to survive and very focused on self rather than being selfless, where the ego you're going to be I'm sorry, rather than the higher self where you're going to be looking out for other people, you're going to be more caring,
Mhm.
you're going to have more trust in yourself than the ego does. So that makes sense.
Yeah. We're no longer trying to, survive in the wilderness and escape from saber-toothed tigers. So, um,
Thank God.
yes. So it's not necessarily something that um, we really need every day, but it's there. It's part of us as humans, and it's powerful. And it thinks that it is the all knowing self. Um, and it knows no different. It's just that's what it is. It thinks all things are important, and that it's, absolutely that you must be the number one and all of those things. And it just doesn't take other humans and collaboration and community and communication into consideration at all.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. And presence definitely helps. And you're kind of saying this before, but being present can help you identify, is this my ego talking
yes.
or is this my higher self talking? And when you're in that awareness or that having that presence, then you can make the choice. And sometimes it's hard and it does take practice. But that's the first step, is to just know and realize, oh, wait a minute, that was my ego. What do I want to do next time? Or how could I react differently? And slowly over time, you'll start realizing that you'll catch it, and then you can let your higher self shine through.
And some things that come to mind for me when we're talking about presence, living in presence, um, and trying to live within the higher self and not the ego, is things like listening to listen, not to respond, like just listening to others, um, being okay with not knowing the answer, because the ego is not okay with that. And the thing is we do have all the answers, but we don't necessarily know it at the moment. So we do need to have things like trust, and but being okay with um, not knowing what's in the future. That's okay. Um, feeling your feelings, another thing that the ego is like, no, that's not okay. It's okay with you having anger because it's thinking it's, a reaction to something bad, but um, all of these things are things that you kind of need to work through as part of being present. You're going to feel your feelings, you're going to be trusting, you're going to be able to just listen if you're present.
Mhm. Those are fabulous suggestions. And the listening that you touched on, listening to listen, I like to call it listening with your heart rather
Yeah.
than with your ears. And that really helped me connect as a mom. I used to, if my kids would cry, it would be like, oh, you're crying and I'm trying to cook dinner and oh, this is annoying. And, I kind of came from that place. But now as I am working on presence, I've started listening with my heart. So my ears say, yeah, it's annoying, but my heart says, well, what do you need? Do you need a hug? Are you hungry? Do you need me for a minute? Like what they need. And it just helps you come from that divine higher self. And it helps you help them, to listen with your heart. So just another way to think about it. And then you were saying that we know all the answers, which absolutely our divine self knows it all. But if you don't have an answer, it's for a reason, because we are here to learn lessons. And if we had all the answers, there would be no point for us to be here. So
Mhm.
in divine timing, you will get the answers to the questions that you seek, whether it comes from just a knowing, you just get the answer through an intuitive hit, or someone comes into your life that can help you answer whatever it is, but it all happened in divine timing. And you were also talking about feelings, which is so important to feel. We're definitely not saying to put those negative feelings off and don't acknowledge them, because you should. um, but I think it's coming from a place of recognizing, okay, this is how I feel. Why do I feel this way? And being okay with it and blessing that feeling, even if it's a negative one, and then you can release it. Because we don't want to when
Mhm.
we harbor it, then it'll manifest as something negative, or it'll attract something negative to us. But if we can just say, okay, I'm angry, this is why I'm angry, I'm okay with it, and I'm going to let it go and move into a positive vibration, and have positive, happy feelings, then you're releasing it.
Yeah, there's a difference between releasing it or letting it go and pushing it away. So when I think of make sure that you feel your feelings, that it's okay to feel them, meaning don't try and ignore them, don't try and push them away, don't resist them. Let them come, be in awareness, and watch them go. Release them.
Yeah. Yeah. With everything that we keep and hold on to will show up in your life, and you
Oh, yes.
won't necessarily know why. Pains or aches or negative experiences that happen to you, getting in a car accident, I mean, anything. It's all manifested. Everything that happens to us is a reflection of our outside, or I'm sorry, everything that happens on the outside is a reflection of your inside. So, yeah, I've actually gotten in the habit of, when something bad is happening, I think, like, what did I do to cause this? Kind of reflect on that so I can do better, in the next day.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it will manifest. And sometimes those manifestations, when they're not taken care of, they manifest into even bigger problems or issues. Um, and I think in the maybe it was the last episode or the one before where I was talking about Greg Brading's book on healing, that so much that happens to humans um, comes from that not you know not dealing with the feelings and the hurt that happens to us as humans. Um, it's okay for things to happen, but then to deal with it then, and don't push it away, don't put it off. And it builds, and it can build inside of us as, heart disease and cancer, and it's just, it'll find somewhere else to hide.
Hmm. Yeah. And it'll follow you.
Yes.
We are a soul at the core of it. We're not our body, we're not our mind. We've talked about that. We are a soul, and your soul will carry the memories from your past lives. So if there's something unresolved that you don't deal with in this life, it will follow you to the next one, and you're still going to have to deal with it, and it's probably going to just get worse. So yeah, it can be uncomfortable, but the more you practice, analyzing what is the cause of this? Why do I feel this way? And again, being able to be okay with it, and then release it out, and say, I'm done feeling this way. It makes such a big difference. And you'll
Yes,
thank yourself later.
absolutely. I also have some tools um, for helping with a presence practice. But do you have anything you want to share additionally on presence or the
Um,
present moment?
One other thing I wanted to touch on, which really goes hand in hand with what we were just saying, is, observing not only your thoughts and your feelings, but observing what your body is telling you and being present enough to realize, because your body is going to communicate with you what it needs. So, I know a lot of times people will say like, "Oh, I'm so tired," or "I'm exhausted," and then we keep going. So if your body is telling you that it's tired, it's telling you that you need to rest, not
Yes.
keep going. That's going to then manifest in something else later on down the road. Um, if you're walking a lot and your feet hurt, well, your body's telling you you need to get off your feet, put your feet up, get new shoes, whatever it is, but just listening to your body.
Yes, absolutely. Listening to your body is important because I'm trying to think, I don't remember the exact quote, but there's a quote that talks about like if you don't take those cues to rest, the universe will step in and it will make you rest. You'll end up down and out for weeks, with the flu or something else. So it is important that we listen to our body. And actually, the first tool that I was going to mention is inner body awareness. So that's the ability to just sit and feel. And when I first started this practice, I really stunk at it big time. I couldn't do it. And the teachers would explain, I'm like, but I'm not feeling that. I don't get that. Now I know how to do, now I get it. Because now I'm more present than I was when I initially tried. But it's really the ability, if you are just completely still and just being, you can actually feel like the inside of your hands. You can feel the inside of your hands, has most like an energy to it, inside of your hands, inside of your feet. And if you sit in that inner body awareness, that presence for a longer period of time, like that energy, like you start to be able to feel more of it. You might be able to feel your arms or your legs, but it really does take being truly in the present moment. Um, and it's very powerful to be able to just sit and feel. Like that's the only thing that you're doing is just feeling. Um, it's kind of when you first start being able to do it, you're kind of like, whoa, like you actually do feel it. But you really have to be present in order to do it. But it is one of the tools that you can use to become present because you're focusing on just your inner body. You're not thinking, you're not doing, you're not um, thinking about the sounds. They're there, you're allowing them, but just aware of your inner body. It's there.
Hmm.
Think about all the things that happen in our bodies as we're like sitting here that we don't even have to control, that they just happen themselves, our heart beating, our digestive system running. So it makes sense that there's like an energy that's flowing through that we just filter out, and this is bringing our attention to it.
Hmm. That's really cool. I've I don't think I've experienced that myself, but it is something that I'm really excited because I know that I will get there eventually. So I'm really excited to get there. That's really cool. I do feel the energy. Like I can feel like a buzzing or like a tingling, that high energy. And sometimes it gets so
Yeah.
intense, like when I'm meditating, it gets so intense that I have to like wiggle because it's just like so much energy. But I think that's different. That's not right.
It's going to feel similar because if you focus on your hands and you're fully present, it'll feel kind of like a tingling at first. And some people might describe it, depending on how you know, much energy is flowing and how present you are. It might even have kind of a buzzing feeling to it, I would think.
Okay.
Uh,
Who knows?
Another thing, another tool, this is one that's really good because it can actually be done anywhere, anytime, and it's quick. Inner body awareness might take you a little while to get used to that, but one is just conscious breathing. So our body's going to breathe subconsciously. It's one of those things that's happening and we are not controlling it. It's there, it's going to subconsciously happen so that we can continue to live. But
Mhm.
conscious breathing, and I actually have an alarm that goes off every 90 minutes. It's a vibration alarm that goes off every 9 minutes to remind me to consciously breathe. Um, and that is just being able to stop completely what you're doing. And doesn't necessarily have to be very deep. It's not a certain way to breathe. It's just that you are consciously focusing on just breathing. I do three, so I'll just do three conscious breaths. It's almost kind of like pushing a reset button, kind of a thing. But it's also another thing that can help bring you into the present moment.
Well, and that's a really good one. My mind went right to with kids,
Mhm.
in the classroom or your personal kids, because that's a quick one that we can teach that really is a nice reset to just stop and calm down. Take your, 3 is a great number, 3, 5, whatever, deep conscious breaths to just focus on that and nothing else. And again, as we talked about earlier, you can only think about one thing at a time. So if you stop thinking about what's angering you and you just focus on the breath for a minute, then it might calm you down enough to then be able to go back and say, okay, now I'm ready to talk about what just happened and why I'm feeling these icky thoughts or feelings. I love that.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites, and that's why I ended up setting the alarm to go off because I found that I was needing those moments, those resets during the school day, and was never finding the time because I was like, how can I even, how I can't do a meditation during the school day. It's, it's just too difficult. So that's what I started doing. I started doing three conscious breaths within at least three conscious breaths within each of, 90-minute period. Um, I would often kind of silence the alarm because I was like mid sentence, that kind of a thing. But my mission this summer is to kind of not ignore those alarms or silence those alarms, stop exactly what I'm doing so that when the school year starts up again, I'll have a little bit of background in the whole, nope, we're stopping, because I think it'll help my students also.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And we, as teachers and even as parents or there any career, throughout your day, most people find that they're so busy, they're not able to be present. They're always go, go, go. Things happen. You don't have time to recover from this incident or this,
Yep.
and there's all these emotions. So how powerful that is. And, if it's at the same time every day, you kind of get into that routine too. So, I know thinking about like as a kid, if I know that in 30 minutes I'm going to get a break, even if it's only for a few seconds,
Yep.
that's helpful. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to really putting that first and working more closely on that and then sharing it with my students. Another tool is just being able to ground in nature, which is something you brought up earlier. That is something that can help bring you to the present moment because you're not just like, I'm not talking about just going outside, but like just being present in nature. It doesn't have like a time limit or time set. It might just be 3 minutes. There, when I was doing virtual schooling and I was fully virtual, which was most of the year for me, um, like I was going a little bit out of my mind being in just these, this little section of the room, always on Zoom. And I would like take literally probably about 7, 8 minutes every day of my lunch, because I didn't get like a whole lunch period, but I would like run outside during that like 20 minutes or whatever that I had. And I would just take like 7 or 8 of them to just literally be present in nature, looking at the color of the trees. What does the sky like today? Not a lot of thinking involved in it, but definitely observing and aware of nature. It could be, like I said, observing the trees or the sky. It could be um, the ground. I'd take my shoes off sometimes and just be, barefoot in the grass. Just truly being aware and present in nature can have a very good grounding effect, but it's another one of those tools that people like for presence because they're getting to enjoy nature.
Mhm. Yeah, actually, I totally resonate with what you said when I was also teaching from Zoom from my house. I would do the same thing at lunch. I would go outside and get the mail, take my dog out, and just be outside for like 10 minutes. And I think people get that like when you're inside for a long time, you just need to get away and get out. I think a lot of people feel that, but it kind of gives us some background as to inherently why we feel that way. And I've generally growing up, I've hated nature because I hate bugs and stuff. But as I've delved into this material and connected more to my inner self and being present in the moment, I found that I am enjoying being in nature a whole lot more. And I don't really care about the bugs quite as much because
Yeah.
I'm not even, it doesn't even matter anymore. So it really does make a difference, and it we are connected to nature,
Yep.
you know. I think that's probably why that's so good.
Another thing I think that kind of came up while we were talking about the word present, and we were talking about like almost that pause in life happening, like the what's just happened and what's about to happen, and just focusing on that little break and pause in between is the actual focusing of the space between your thoughts, the no mind, or focusing on the space between sound. So, like, if I were to be silent right now, I can kind of hear in a very distant, like cars on the highway, but not focusing on the cars on the highway, but focusing on the space that happens in between those sounds, or focusing on the space between sensations. So it's all about the pause, it's all about the space between. A lot of meditation teachers use the pause of breath because your body naturally does it and you don't even know it. Between inhale and exhale, and between exhale and inhale, your body naturally pauses, um, and you don't even realize it. It doesn't like go from one to the other. There's like a lull naturally. And so just focusing on any of those kind of natural pauses.
Mhm. As you were saying that, I was paying attention to my breath to notice the pause. It's so I love that. And I think it's so true. It goes right back to what we were saying with everything so go, go, go. And I just I love that so much that I'm like almost trying like struggling to find the words because it's so powerful to pause.
Mhm. And
And
pauses don't have to be long. It could be like a second. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm thinking when I'm breathing, when my body's pausing, it's probably like a fraction of a second. But when I focus on it, when I'm actually being aware that it's happening, probably lengthens a bit. So even if it's a second, and in some meditation teachers, they'll have you do like they call it like they call it box breathing, where you breathe, inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, and then hold for a count of 4. So it's almost like you're forming a box, a square.
gotcha.
And I've done that with my students sometimes, that box breathing. But that pause, I almost get like a lot of people will talk about the exhale being like a release, but to me, almost that feeling of the pause is almost like a release because it's like you've had this inhale and you've gotten a pause. You have this exhale and now you've gotten this, this gift of a pause. But that happens in so many things: thoughts, sounds, sensations, so many things, breathing, heartbeat. There's so many things
Mm,
that just have natural pauses. And we don't even realize it because we're too busy too busy doing and not
mhm,
being.
mhm,
We don't get to a place of no mind. We're always inside of our heads.
mhm. Yeah, that's got me thinking like, why? Because when you think about all of these things that are natural that we've talked about, like being in nature and pausing and being, those are our natural states of being. And we've gotten so far away from that. And I'm like, why? Like that is just such a beautiful way to be without all of the distractions. That's something to think about.
Yeah. And think about all of the kids who it's said that they have trouble focusing. Are
Hmm.
they really just truly being, you know?
Hmm. Yes, that is such a good point. My
Something that I
goodness,
think about a
love
lot.
that. Yeah.
So, like you said with your kids, like pausing, taking the time to figure out what it is that they need in that moment.
Hmm.
Hard to do with 30 of them, but yeah, like truly giving them the time and being present in the moment with them.
Hmm. And I'm thinking too, if we are teaching our students all of this, everything that we have been talking about for what are we on the 10th episode? Everything that we've been talking about, you're probably not even going to need to focus on all of them at the same time, because
Mhm.
their awareness, their perception, their thoughts, their mindset, it's all going to be so different than what it is right now that they're going to be, I just think it would be so different in a good
Yeah,
way.
yeah, I agree. A couple of more things that I have for tools. I think you brought this up a couple of weeks ago is like taking a mindful shower. So if you're going to take a
Mhm.
shower or even brush your teeth, shower, something that's you normally do anyway, but doing it mindfully. So thinking and doing nothing else except taking the shower or except brushing your teeth. It's like I'm putting the toothpaste on the toothbrush right now, like mindfully doing that, not subconsciously doing that while you're actually thinking about your meeting that's happening in the morning or writing a to-do list with one hand while you're trying to brush your teeth with the other hand, but like mindfully doing those things that we would normally do subconsciously.
Mhm. I was just thinking as you said that, that's a good way to help yourself reprogram if you start being conscious and present in the moment, because it's that constantly spaced repetition to change your programs. So if you're so super present, then you're going to be able to change your programs and be conscious of what's going into your mind so much more, whether it's actions or just thoughts.
Absolutely. Something else that I have written down as a tool. Um, this isn't something that you necessarily would do for like the long term, but something that I've done in periods where I've been struggling with presence that has kind of helped me get back on track. And that is like labeling. So you're fully present and noticing the world around you. You're fully aware, but when you find that you're getting off track and you find yourself slipping out from presence or out of awareness, rather than being reactive to the emotion that's coming up or judging yourself, just labeling. So maybe it's um, you're sitting, you're fully present, you're just being mindful of the moment, and a horn honks out front and you just say hearing. You don't even say horn, you don't say car, you're not thinking about what it is or why it's happening, no judgment at all, but just hearing, recognizing that you heard something. And then um, one that I find helps me is I'll say thinking. So when I start slipping out of presence, and I feel my mind is going, I don't judge myself. I just make a note. Thinking, hearing, somebody turns the ceiling fan on and suddenly you're, feeling, and you might say feeling, but it's just a label, it's just a note. And like I said, it's not something that you would keep as a permanent practice. But if you find that you're having trouble getting yourself into mindfulness, into presence, um, that's something that can kind of give you, I almost feel like it gives me like something to hold on to keep me here. Um, but it's like just a resource that I
Mhm.
use, and I don't use it always. Um, but I definitely think that it kind of can help. And, after a couple of minutes, you might notice that you don't need them anymore. You don't need to label anymore,
Mhm.
because those things can come up and you're just naturally not going to react.
Mhm.
You're not going to need to say or do anything.
Mhm. That's a paradigm all in itself. Being able to do that as your natural reaction. But what I was thinking is that that's a really good way to teach this
Hmm.
because it does help you stop and acknowledge what it is with that label. So I really like that as a strategy to teach ourselves and our kids how to start being present and aware. That's great.
And I think the rest of the tools that I have in my, toolbox are all ones that we've talked about before, like gratitude practices and meditation. And we'll
Mhm.
talk more about those things. But I just wanted to give like a list of things that are pretty quick or simple, even pleasurable in some cases, most cases, that people can kind of do to have presence.
Mhm. Yeah, that's awesome. And maybe Eileen, you can put them in our Facebook group too. It just as, maybe all of them, just to have them somewhere written down where people can go back and see them.
Sure.
So, just as a reminder for everyone out there, our Facebook group is called Mindset Teaching Outside the Box. We are growing by the week. So, come on over, join us. We post lots of content. Or not this morning, earlier today, I read a chapter from Power of Awareness to go with our awareness episode from last week. We're all doing really good things and we have a beautiful community forming. So we would love to have you come and join us for that. And Eileen, anything else?
I'm just grateful for them to be here.
Awesome. Me too. And we will see you next week.